Welcome to my video. I hope you stick around to see the transition from this big piece of yellow birch to this beautiful salad bowl. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up as that will help grow my channel. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave those and I will respond. Again, thank you. So if you've been following my channel, you'll know I got a new lathe, and the new lathe will let me turn bigger pieces. So I'm going to continue with this theme and turning a bigger piece here. This is yellow birch. It's going to be probably 16, 17 inches in diameter. I can turn 18, and I've got a little bit of gap down the bottom, so it's probably 16 to 17 inches. It's going to be fairly deep, as you can see. It's a heavy piece right now. We'll make that round here fairly quickly. With these heavy pieces, I screw it onto a faceplate to start. I wouldn't trust a glue block at this point. Again, this just being so heavy. And it's yellow birch. Yellow birch, one of the things about yellow birch is you can turn them very, very thin. And I'm going to do that on this bowl. It is wet. It's about 20% moisture, but because I'm going to turn it thin, it'll dry fairly quickly once I turn it. And it will go a bit out around, but that's kind of the style that I'm going for in this bowl. Now I have the outside shaped, and I'm just getting ready to flip it around. It's sanded, all of the tear out, which wasn't a lot, but there was a bit. It's been sanded off. It's in good shape. It's not a final sanding by any means, but I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to mark this side for my tenon because I'm going to screw it on. But if I don't get it exactly in the same spot when I flip it around, then that means I'm going to have to sand this again or use a tool to make it round. So I'm going to try and get it as close as I can. Hopefully it'll be perfect. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do some more work on this. That's why I'm not going to get real fussy about it now. So you can see though, that's a pretty good finish on it now. So hopefully if I get it balanced when I flip it around, I'll be good to go. And we'll start working on the inside. In order to maximize my chances of getting it centered when I flip it around, I put the faceplate on the tailstock and then put a couple screws in it at this point so that when I flip it around, I should be still centered. Now I flipped it around and I'm just removing the original faceplate that I had on it. Because this bowl is so large, I'm using screws rather than a glue block. And this is why I didn't spend a lot of time sanding the outside, because I'm off just a little bit. So I'm going to have to reshape the outside. Oh, I'm out. I'm out quite a bit. Almost a quarter of an inch. Not sure how that happened. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to shape the outside again. So that's why you don't spend a lot of time refining this, because I can't leave it like this, because then when I go to cut the inside, I'm only going to be a quarter of an inch or less. So that certainly won't work. So I have to reshape the outside. Remember, I put this piece on relative to this piece. Now it could have been a bit out around just from the fact that it was a little wet still and drying, but I don't think so, because it was turning well the other way. And it's currently at about 20% moisture. So it's certainly not dry. At 20%, it could still move as it dries. No, it shouldn't move a lot, but it could move a bit. But let's go ahead and shape that outside. And it won't take very long. Here you can see how much material I had to take off the outside of the bowl just to true it up again. As you can see, I've got it mounted the other way around, and I've sanded the outside, so just to round it up, if you remember, it was out of round a little bit when I remounted it. So now it's round again, and I've only sanded it to 80 grit, so it needs another sanding, but this wood is still wet. So I'm going to turn the inside, and when I turn the inside, I'm going to turn it fairly thin. It'll dry fairly quickly, and it'll sand better dry than it does wet. So I'm going to leave it at 80 grit for now, sand it after I've turned some of the inside out. So here I'm starting to work on the inside of the bowl. I'm using my bowl gouge. Start out near the rim, I plunge into the bowl, and then start scooping it out, working towards the center. Now you're going to see here that I'm getting a lot of very fine shavings. You see the sawdust on my tool rest. This indicates that it's time to sharpen this gouge. Now that I've sharpened it, you can see that I'm getting much larger shavings. Cutting is happening much easier, and that doesn't take a lot. I just take that over to my bench grinder, and I'm spending 10 seconds maybe on the gouge, just enough to give it a sharp edge. Now I do have a jig, so I'm not removing much material, and I will often sharpen my gouge a couple times during a project. When I do a deep bowl that is very thin, I do it a little bit different, and you can see that here. I'll start out at the rim, and I get that to the thickness that I want, and then work my way across the middle. Try and maintain as much of that center mass for as long as possible. The reason for that is, especially on a big bowl like this, these walls are thin enough that they can warp just from centrifugal speed, and they'll go out of round while turning. So to counterbalance this, that's the reason why I keep that mass in the center and make sure that the walls are finished before I move down any further. The bowl gouge is cutting very well. The shavings are coming off, are very long and heavy. So it takes no time at all to hollow out the inside of this bowl. I was probably about 20 minutes. Here I've switched to my carbide scraper. That's just to work the walls and remove any lines that may have been left behind by the bowl gouge. It doesn't remove as much material, but it does give me a slightly better finish. The other thing you saw there is I was using my thickness caliper gauges to measure for a uniform thickness. Again, this bowl is going to be thin, less than 1/4 of an inch, so it's important that it's thin and uniform. Here I'm removed the rest of the center material as well as removing the tailstock. And now you can see I'm working the bottom of the bowl where it transitions from the side to the base. And here I like to use my scraper. I just find that that's the tool that I have the best luck with in this area. So the bowl has been sanded to 600 grit. And it's finished now. It's quite thin. It's less than 1/4 of an inch, very uniform. That's one of the things with yellow birch. You can turn it thin. But because it was wet and it dried on the lathe, and it's been sitting, like I said, on the lathe for about a week, it has gone out around. You can probably see that as it's spinning. It's not perfectly round. And you can see it, but I don't mind it. I think it's part of the character of the bowl, and it may continue to move a little bit as it continues to dry. We'll go ahead and remove it off the lathe and apply finish. Here I am applying the finish. I'm just going to put a tung oil finish on this, and I had in a previous video covered how I did this, but in this case it's being done off the lathe, and I just pour a little bit of tung oil inside the bowl and I rub it around as much as possible and on the outside. And at this point I leave an excess amount of tung oil on the bowl and I don't rub it off. I let it sit because it will soak it in, and then after it's sat overnight I'll come back and apply a little bit more and rub it in and make sure that I have a nice even coat. So let's talk about this bowl. I think it turned out very well. It's about 16 inches in diameter and about 6 inches tall. So it's one of the bigger bowls. Now this was turned wet, as I mentioned and as you saw in the video. So I don't know if you can see it, but the rim has gone out of round. It's out of round almost 1/4 of an inch. And the top surface here is high here and low here. It adds to that rustic look, and that's what will happen when you turn a wet bowl. As it dries, it will move. And it may continue to move a little bit more as time goes on, but I think it turned out quite nice. It's got a tung oil finish, quite smooth. I have laser engraved on the bottom, and this is a housewarming gift for friends of ours. You can see that there. So hopefully they'll enjoy it, and they'll be able to invite us over for a large salad. I think the bowl turned out very well. You can see the different variations in the wood here on the inside of the bowl. You can also see here, looking at the rim, it has gone out around, and the rim is not perfectly flat. I think that adds to the character of the bowl. Let me know in the comments what you think. Overall, very pleased with the way this bowl turns out, and I hope that Catherine and Jacob enjoy it as well.